My name is Emma Catherine Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if I was just good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, my family would finally see me. I was wrong. I've spent the last decade funding my family's lifestyle while they planned my sister's dream life. I've paid for emergencies that weren't emergencies, covered debts that became vacations, and smiled through celebrations that never included me. I told myself this was what family meant: sacrifice, support, showing up even when no one showed up for you. But there's a difference between being loved and being useful. And it took me 32 years and one devastating night to understand which one I'd actually been. This is the story of how I went from being the invisible daughter to the woman who finally chose herself. It's about the moment everything changed. Not when I finally spoke up, but when I finally stopped waiting for them to listen. The pain woke me at 2:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my phone screen when the first wave hit, scrolling mindlessly through social media before bed. The way you do when you can't quite silence your thoughts enough to sleep. One moment I was looking at a friend's vacation photos, and the next, I was doubled over on my bathroom floor, phone clattering against the tile. The pain was unlike anything I'd experienced. Sharp, consuming. It radiated from somewhere deep in my abdomen, spreading through my body like fire through dry wood. I tried to stand, to make it to the door, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. My vision blurred at the edges. I was bleeding. And the rational part of my brain, the part that had learned to stay calm in crisis, the part that had been trained since childhood to handle things independently, told me exactly what to do. Call 911. Stay conscious. Breathe. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone. The screen was too bright in the darkness of my bathroom. I could barely focus enough to dial. When the operator answered, my voice didn't sound like my own. "I need an ambulance," I managed. "I'm bleeding. The pain. I can't." She was asking me questions. My address. What symptoms? Could I get to the door to unlock it? I answered on autopilot, each word requiring more effort than the last. The floor was cold beneath me. I could hear my own heartbeat. Too fast, too loud. "Help is on the way, Emma. Stay on the line with me." I don't remember everything after that. Fragments. And the sound of sirens getting closer. Paramedics in my apartment. How did they get in? Did I unlock the door? Bright lights. Concerned faces. Hands helping me onto a stretcher. In the ambulance, drifting between consciousness and something darker, I remembered my phone. My family. They needed to know. One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, must have seen me reaching for my bag. "Your phone's right here, honey," she said, placing it in my hand. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" "I've got it," I whispered. I pulled up our family group chat. The last message was from 3 days ago, my mother asking if anyone had seen her blue cardigan. Rachel had responded with a laughing emoji. I'd read it and said nothing, like usual. My fingers felt thick and clumsy as I typed, "Emergency, hospital. Please come." I hit send and closed my eyes, phone clutched against my chest. They would come. They had to come. This was different from all the other times I'd needed them. This was serious. Life-threatening. The kind of emergency that made everything else fall away. My phone buzzed. Once. Twice. I lifted it. Hope and fear tangled so tightly in my chest I couldn't separate them. "Mom. Emma, your sister's engagement party is tomorrow. We've been planning this for months. Can this wait until Sunday?" I stared at the words. Read them again. Surely I was misunderstanding. Surely the pain medication they'd given me was making me confused. Another buzz. "Dad. Your mother's right. We have 60 people coming. Call us after the party." The ambulance hit a bump, and fresh pain shot through my abdomen, but I barely felt it. But I was reading the messages over and over, waiting for the follow-up text that would make them make sense. Just kidding, we're on our way. We're scared and saying stupid things. Anything. Rachel hadn't responded at all. You okay, honey? The paramedic was watching me with concern. You're crying. I hadn't realized. I touched my face and my fingers came away wet. Just pain. I lied. She squeezed my hand. We're almost there. They're going to take good care of you. But she was wrong. Because in that moment, staring at those messages while an ambulance rushed me to emergency surgery, I understood something I'd been refusing to see for 32 years. No one was coming. Not tonight. Not ever. Not in the way I needed them to. I'd been the responsible daughter, the one who had her life together, the one who asked for nothing and gave everything. I'd funded their emergencies, covered their mistakes, celebrated their victories while my own went unnoticed. I'd told myself that's what love looked like. Quiet support, endless patience, being there without needing them to be there for me. But this wasn't love. This was convenience. I was useful, not cherished. And useful things don't get emergency visits. They don't get worried phone calls or rearranged plans. They just keep functioning until they break. And even then, the only question is whether they can be fixed or need to be replaced. The ambulance doors opened, hospital lights flooded in, harsh and fluorescent. New voices, new hands, a gurney rushing down white corridors. Someone was asking me questions I couldn't focus on. The pain was getting worse. Or maybe I just didn't have the energy to keep it at bay anymore. We need to contact your family, a nurse was saying. Do you have someone we should call? I gave her my parents' numbers. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or some last desperate hope that this time would be different. The nurse disappeared. I lay on the hospital bed staring at ceiling tiles, counting them because it was easier than thinking. 1, 2, 3, 4. She came back, and her expression told me everything before she opened her mouth. Your mother said... She hesitated, clearly confused. She said they're busy tomorrow. She asked if we could reschedule the surgery. If I hadn't been in so much pain, I might have laughed. That's not how emergency medicine works, I explained, my voice flat, distant, like I was talking about someone else's life. The nurse's face softened with something that cut deeper than any of the physical pain, pity. This stranger recognized the abnormality I'd spent a lifetime normalizing. You'll be okay, she said gently. We'll take care of you. They did. The medical team, I mean. Strangers who owed me nothing treated me with more care than the people who'd known me my entire life. I had emergency surgery that night for a ruptured ovarian cyst. They told me later that I'd been bleeding internally, that the pain I'd felt was my body screaming that something was catastrophically wrong, that I'd done the right thing calling 911 when I did. I did the right thing. But my family did what they'd always done, chose Rachel. When I woke up in recovery, groggy and aching, the first thing I did was check my phone. It's pathetic, I know. Even then, even after everything, some part of me still hoped. There were messages, but not the ones I needed. Rachel had posted 17 Instagram stories about her engagement party preparations. My mother had commented on every single one. Heart emojis. So beautiful. Can't wait for tomorrow. There was nothing for me. Not a follow-up text. Not a, how did the surgery go? Not even a, we're thinking of you. Just silence. And in that silence, something inside me broke. But it wasn't a collapse. It was a crack in a dam that had been holding back years of truth. Everything I'd been refusing to see came flooding through. This wasn't sadness anymore. This was awakening. I need you to understand something. My family didn't hate me. That would almost be easier to explain. Hate is active. Hate acknowledges existence. I was just less. Less important, less celebrated, less remembered, less needed. And I'd been less for as long as I could remember. I was born when my parents were 23 and still figuring out how to be adults themselves. My mom worked at a pharmacy counter. My dad was trying to establish himself as a general contractor. Money was tight, time was tighter, and I learned early that the way to help was to need as little as possible. My first clear memory is of getting myself ready for preschool. I must have been 4, maybe 5. I remember standing on the bathroom stool to reach the sink, brushing my own teeth because Mom was exhausted and Dad had already left for work. I picked out my own clothes. They didn't always match, but they were clean. I poured my own cereal. Even then, I understood that being easy made people happy. Then Rachel was born, and everything shifted in ways I didn't have the language to describe. She was a difficult baby. Colicky, my mother would say later, with a kind of fond exhaustion, as if it was charming in retrospect. She screamed for hours. She wouldn't sleep. She needed constant holding, constant attention, constant everything. I watched my mother transform. All that exhaustion I'd tried so hard not to add to became laser-focused on my sister. Every cry was urgent. Every need was immediate. And I, quiet, self-sufficient, easy Emma, faded further into the background. I learned to dress myself completely, to make my own breakfast, to walk to the school bus alone while Mom rocked a screaming Rachel, to do my homework at the kitchen table in silence while Dad bounced Rachel on his knee, his whole face lighting up when she finally smiled. I wasn't neglected, not in the obvious ways. I had food, clothes, a warm bed, but I was functionally invisible. And invisibility, I learned, was my role, my value. The pattern crystallized on my 10th birthday. I'd been excited for weeks. Double digits felt significant, important. Mom had promised we'd go to the pizza place I loved, the one with the arcade games. I picked out a new dress with my allowance money. I made a list of friends to invite. The morning of my birthday, I woke up early. I could hear voices downstairs. Mom on the phone, her voice strained. I know it's short notice, but Rachel got selected for a solo in the recital. It's tonight. We can't miss it. My birthday dinner was rescheduled. To the following week, Mom promised. Then that week came and something else came up. We never did make it to the pizza place. Rachel's dance recital was beautiful. I sat in the audience in my new dress, watching my 7-year-old sister twirl across the stage, watching my parents beam with pride, and I understood. This was how it would be. Rachel's B- test scores got ice cream celebrations for trying your best. My straight A report cards got a "that's nice, honey," if they got acknowledged at all. Rachel got a brand new bike for her 8th birthday, shiny and expensive. I'd saved my allowance for 6 months to buy my own bike secondhand from a neighbor's garage sale. When I proudly showed my parents, my dad said, "Good job being responsible." Then he went back to assembling Rachel's new bike. I made honor roll every semester. Rachel struggled through school, but when she finally passed a math test, there was cake and celebration. When I won a writing award, Mom said, "Congratulations," without looking up from helping Rachel with her homework. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Tell me in the comments, because I want you to know you're not alone. I developed a coping mechanism. I told myself I was better than needing validation, more mature, more independent. I turned my invisibility into a source of quiet pride. I didn't need my parents hovering over me like they hovered over Rachel. I was fine on my own. But late at night, I'd finish my homework and sit at the top of the stairs, listening to the sounds of life happening without me. My parents laughing with Rachel in the living room. Board games I wasn't invited to. Inside jokes I didn't understand. And I'd wonder what I'd done wrong to deserve being left out. The answer, I eventually understood, was nothing. I'd done nothing wrong. I'd just made the mistake of being easy to ignore. The real turning point came when I was 16. I was homesick from school, resting on the couch, when my mom's friend came over for coffee. They didn't realize I could hear them in the kitchen. "How do you manage with two girls?" the friend was asking. "Mine are exhausting." "Oh, Emma's so easy," my mother said, her voice light. "She basically raises herself. It's Rachel who needs us. She's just, she needs more support, you know?" I lay on that couch, staring at the ceiling, and something clicked into place. I'd been punished for being low maintenance. My independence, which I'd cultivated because that's what they needed from me, had become the reason they felt justified in ignoring me. I'd made it too easy for them to focus everything on Rachel. And now it was just the natural order of things. I was the daughter who didn't need them. Rachel was the daughter they chose. That night, I cried into my pillow, muffling the sound so no one would hear. Because even in my pain, I'd learned to be quiet, to not be a burden, to handle it myself. I was 16 years old, and I already understood that in my family, love was conditional, and I'd failed to meet the conditions. High school was when the favoritism stopped being about basic needs and started being about dreams. I graduated third in my class. I'd worked multiple part-time jobs, saved every dollar, studied until my eyes burned. I earned a full scholarship to a state university with a good business program. My graduation was on a Saturday afternoon, cap and gown under the June sun, my name called to scattered applause. My parents took me to Applebee's afterward. We sat in a booth, the vinyl sticking to my legs, my graduation gown folded beside me. They ordered appetizers to share. We were there 45 minutes before my dad checked his watch. "We should head out soon," he said. "Rachel's friend is having a pool party at 6. I watched them leave the restaurant before I'd finished my meal. I sat alone at that table, still in my graduation dress, and realized this was my celebration. This half-eaten burger, this shared appetizer, this checking the watch distraction. Rachel graduated high school 2 years later, barely scraping by with a 2.3 GPA. She announced she was taking a gap year to find herself. My parents not only agreed, they funded 6 months of travel through Europe. Instagram updates of Paris, Barcelona, Amsterdam. My mother commenting on every post. "So proud of you for following your dreams." I'd used my gap year, which wasn't really a gap year, just the summer between high school and college, to work 2 jobs to save money for textbooks and emergencies. The emotional neglect became more sophisticated as we got older. It wasn't overt exclusion anymore. It was being a constant afterthought. Family photos from holidays tell the story better than I can describe it. Rachel front and center, posed and perfect. My parents on either side of her. And me? Cut off at the edge of the frame, or missing entirely because I was the one taking the photo. No one ever thought to ask someone else to take it so I could be included. Christmas gifts became a study in disparity. Rachel received things that showed thought, attention, awareness of who she was and what she wanted. A high-end camera one year because she'd mentioned wanting to get into photography. Custom jewelry. Experiences. Concert tickets. Spa days. Weekend trips. I received gift cards. $50 to Target. $100 to Amazon. Generic. Impersonal. The kind of gift you give to someone you don't really know. When I got accepted to graduate school for my MBA, something I'd worked toward for years, I called my parents, excited despite knowing better. "That's nice, honey," my mother said. Then, without a pause, "Have you talked to your sister lately? She's seeing someone new. I really think this one might be serious." The conversation shifted to Rachel's dating life. My acceptance to graduate school, something I'd worked 3 years to achieve. Well, I got less than 30 seconds before being replaced by speculation about Rachel's new boyfriend. I learned to stop expecting anything, not acknowledgement, not celebration, not even basic interest. But I couldn't stop trying to earn it. That was my fatal flaw. I kept believing that if I just achieved enough, contributed enough, proved enough, they'd finally see me. I earned my MBA with a 3.9 GPA. I landed a position at a respected financial consulting firm. I bought my first car with cash I'd saved. I got my first apartment, furnished it myself, built a life I was proud of. Each milestone was met with minimal acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Rachel quit her third job in as many months, and my parents took her out for dinner to cheer her up. Rachel spent the weekend binge-watching Netflix, and my mother posted on Facebook about how hard she was working. Rachel decided to start an online boutique that lasted 6 weeks before she abandoned it, and my father told everyone she was an entrepreneur. I got promoted to senior consultant, and my achievement was met with, "Good for you," in the family group chat. No follow-up questions, no celebration, just 2 words and then silence. The breaking point of this era came on my 25th birthday. I decided to try one more time to create a family memory where I was central. I planned a dinner party at my apartment. I spent days preparing. I made Rachel's favorite pasta dish, my father's favorite dessert, my mother's preferred wine. I set the table with care, bought flowers, created a playlist of music they liked. I wanted them to see me, really see me, to sit in my space, to see what I'd built, to celebrate me for once. They arrived 30 minutes late. Traffic, my mother said, though I lived 10 minutes from them. Rachel texted an hour before dinner. "Sorry, something came up with friends. Have fun." Something came up. With friends. My parents sat at my carefully set table, but they weren't really there. My father took a work call halfway through the meal. My mother commented that Rachel makes a lighter version of this pasta dish. They asked about work in the vague way you ask when you're being polite, not when you're actually interested. They left 90 minutes after they arrived. Leftovers barely touched. Cake uncut. "Thanks for dinner, honey," my mother said, kissing my cheek absently. "We should do this again sometime." I closed the door behind them and stood in my apartment, looking at the table I'd set with such hope, candles still burning, flowers perfectly arranged, food cooling in serving dishes, a cake with 25 candles that would never be lit. I didn't cry. I think I was beyond crying by then. I just cleared the table mechanically, put away the food, blew out the candles. I made a decision that night. I would stop expecting anything. Stop hoping they'd suddenly see my worth. Stop trying to earn a place I should have had by default. But here's the terrible irony. I didn't stop giving. I stopped expecting reciprocation, but I kept showing up, kept helping, kept being useful. Because being useful was the only role I'd ever been allowed to have, and I didn't know how to be anything else. The phone call came 2 years after that birthday dinner. I was 27, settled into my career, finally feeling stable. My father's name on my phone screen was unusual enough to make my heart skip. He called maybe 3 times a year. Birthdays sometimes, holidays if I didn't call first. "Emma? Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" Sweetheart. He only used terms of endearment when he needed something. "I'm good, Dad. What's up?" "Listen, your mother needs some dental work. Major stuff, implants, some other procedures. Insurance doesn't cover it all. It's about $8,000. $8,000. I did quick mental math. I had it. I'd been saving for a down payment on a house, but I had it. "The thing is," he continued, "we've had some unexpected expenses lately. Rachel's boutique needed some startup capital, and we wanted to help her out. And you know how it is. We're not getting younger. We've had to dip into retirement savings a bit." What he wasn't saying, They'd spent their emergency fund on Rachel's failed business venture, and now they needed me to solve the problem. I can help, I heard myself say. How about I cover half, and you two cover the other half? 4,000 each? The relief in his voice was immediate. That would be amazing. Thank you, Emma. I knew we could count on you. I transferred $4,000 that afternoon. 2 months later, scrolling through social media, I saw photos of Rachel's new apartment. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, the kind of place that required a substantial deposit and first month's rent. I did the math. That apartment, in that neighborhood, at least $5,000 for move-in costs. I called my mother, trying to keep my voice casual. Hey, I noticed Rachel moved. Beth, that place looks great. Oh, it is. She was so stressed about coming up with the deposit, but we were able to help her out. You know how tough it is for young people these days. My stomach dropped. How much was the deposit? About 3,000, plus first month's rent. But your father and I managed to scrape together what we needed. 3,000, plus rent. 5,000 total at least. When they'd told me they couldn't afford to pay half of Mom's dental work. Mom, you said you didn't have money for your dental work. That's why I sent $4,000. We didn't, honey. We only paid $1,500 of our half. But we needed to help your sister, and you're doing so well. We figured you wouldn't mind covering a bit extra. Rachel's struggling. You're doing fine. You don't understand the pressure. I dropped it. And what was I going to do? Demand the money back? Make my mother feel bad for helping my sister? 'Cause family drama over money? So I said nothing. And that silence became permission. 6 months later. Emma, your father's car broke down. The repair costs more than the car's worth. Could you co-sign a loan for a new one? We'll make the payments, of course. I co-signed. They made 3 payments. Then the payments stopped, and collection notices started arriving in my name. My credit score dropped 40 points before I even knew what was happening. 10 months later. The house needs a new roof. We got quotes, and the cheapest is 13,000. We can cover 7 if you can help with 6. I sent $6,000. The roof was replaced. It probably cost exactly 13,000, or maybe it didn't. I'd never know. 18 months later. Rachel's in trouble, credit card debt. She's really stressed about it. She needs $3,500 to pay it off and get a fresh start. Can you help your sister out? I helped my sister out. Every time I told myself this was temporary. Family helps family. This was crisis assistance, not a pattern. They'd remember. They'd appreciate it. Eventually, they'd pay me back, or at least acknowledge what I'd done. They never did. My mother's calls became transactional. They'd start with, "How are you?" and end with a request within 3 minutes. Sometimes she didn't even pretend. Just, "Emma, your father's car insurance went up. Can you help with the difference this month?" Rachel texted me only when she needed something. "Hey, can you loan me 500? I'll pay you back next week." Next week never came. The request just turned into another one a month later. My father forwarded me Rachel's bills sometimes. Just forwarded them. No message, just an assumption that I'd handle it. I kept records. Not because I planned to demand repayment. I'm a financial consultant. Documentation is automatic for me. Every bank transfer, every check, every Venmo payment with a note about what it was for. Over 5 years, I gave or loaned my family $47,000. 47,000? Let that sink in for a moment. I wasn't wealthy. I made good money, yes, but not throw around $50,000 money. That was every vacation I didn't take. Every house down payment I delayed. Every nice thing I denied myself because my family needs this right now. I drove a 10-year-old car because I'd helped buy Dad a new one. And I lived in a modest apartment because I'd helped pay for Rachel's deposit and Mom's dental work, and the house roof, and the endless emergencies that were never really emergencies. But here's the complicated truth. I knew I was being used. I'm not stupid. I saw exactly what was happening, but I was trapped in something more powerful than logic: hope. Hope that this time they'd see my value. Hope that accumulating enough sacrifices would finally earn me a seat at the table I'd been standing outside my whole life. Hope that if I just gave enough, proved my worth enough times, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at Rachel. And underneath the hope was fear. Fear that if I stopped giving, I'd lose even the minimal connection I had. At least when they called, I heard their voices. At least when they needed me, I served a purpose. Being useful was better than being completely forgotten, wasn't it? I sat in my apartment one evening, looking at my savings account. Still healthy, I was disciplined, careful, smart with money. But it should have been so much more. The house I should have owned, the retirement fund that should have been growing, the life I should have been building. Instead, I'd been building theirs. My mother called only when she needed money. 5-minute conversations, maximum. How are you? Fine. Listen, we have this thing. Request made, transfer promised, call ended. Rachel's texts. Can you help me out? Followed by nothing. No. How are you? No. What's new? No relationship beyond me as an ATM. My father's forwards. Bills with my name CC'd. No message, just an assumption. I'd become a function, not a daughter. And still, I kept giving. Because I didn't know how to stop. Because being useful was the only value I'd ever been allowed to have. I stared at my laptop, at my savings account balance, and asked myself a question I wasn't ready to answer yet. When will enough be enough? I didn't know. But the crisis that would force me to find out was already coming. I woke up in the hospital after surgery, alone in a recovery room that smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. The nurse who checked on me was kind. She brought me water, adjusted my bed, explained that the surgery had gone well. Ruptured ovarian cyst with significant internal bleeding. They'd repaired everything laparoscopically. I'd need a few days here, then rest at home. Do you have someone coming to stay with you when you're released? She asked. I'll figure it out, I said, and she gave me that look again. The pity. But she didn't push. I spent 3 days in that hospital. 3 days of nurses checking vitals, doctors updating me on recovery, physical therapists helping me walk down the hallway. 3 days of institutional meals and bad television and pain that was both physical and something deeper. My parents didn't visit. Saturday was Rachel's engagement party. They couldn't miss that. Sunday they were exhausted from hosting and planning to come Monday. Monday came. No visit. Rachel never acknowledged my hospitalization at all. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. On the third day, Marcus, a colleague I barely knew beyond polite hallway conversation, showed up at my door with a change of clothes and an offer to drive me home. How did you know I was here? I asked, surprised. You missed 3 days of work without notice. That's not like you. I called HR. They had you listed as emergency medical leave. I figured you might need help. This man, who owed me nothing, who I'd never even had lunch with, helped me get dressed. He collected my discharge paperwork, drove me home in his reliable sedan, helped me up the stairs to my apartment, made sure I had groceries and prescriptions. My wife's making soup, he said. I'll bring some by tomorrow. You need anything before I go? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Emma, he said gently, nobody should go through surgery alone. Call if you need anything, okay? After he left, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. A stranger had shown me more care in 3 hours than my family had shown in 3 days. And the week after surgery was when everything crystallized. I couldn't do much physically. Doctor's orders: rest, limited activity, let your body heal. So I rested, and I thought, and I couldn't stop thinking. I opened my laptop and did what I do when I need to process. I created a spreadsheet: every date, every amount, every purpose. Mom's dental surgery, $4,000, told I was paying half, actually paid almost 3 times my share. Dad's car loan cosign, $850 per month for 6 months. Then collection damage when he stopped paying, house roof. $6,000 Rachel's credit card debt. $3,500 emergency rent help. $2,200, which I now knew went to her boutique. Dad's car repair. $1,800. Mom's medical bills. $2,400. On and on, transaction after transaction. The total came to $52,000. Not the $47,000 I'd estimated. $52,000 over 5 years. Then I created another document. Every missed event, every dismissed achievement, every time I was the last priority. My hospitalization ignored for engagement party prep. My graduate school acceptance overshadowed by Rachel's new boyfriend. My promotion met with 2-word response. My 25th birthday dinner abandoned. My college graduation cut short for a pool party. The list went on for pages. Then I did something that changed everything. I opened Rachel's social media, really looked at it. Let myself see what I'd been avoiding. Photos from her engagement party. The venue. A botanical garden event space I recognized. Minimum rental fee, $5,000. The catering setup in the background. At least another $5,000 for 60 people. The decorations, the photographer, the bar service. Conservative estimate, $15,000 for one party. I scrolled back further. 2 weeks ago. We booked our dream venue. Can't wait to get married in Cabo. I researched. Destination weddings in Cabo for the size she was describing, starting at $40,000. Closer photo of her hand. That ring. I'd worked in finance long enough to estimate. $3,000 minimum, probably closer to 5. I sat back, calculator in hand, and did the math. In the past 2 years alone, while claiming financial hardship, my family had spent over $60,000 on Rachel's relationship milestones. While I was paying for Mom's dental surgery, they couldn't afford. Dad's car repairs, they were stretched thin. Rachel's credit card debt, she was really struggling. The family home roof, they'd dipped into retirement. I hadn't been helping with emergencies. I'd been subsidizing their lifestyle so they could fund Rachel's dreams. And the betrayal settled over me like ice water. Not the hot rage I'd expected. Something colder. Clearer. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Emma, why haven't you responded about the wedding contribution? We need to finalize numbers. Family helps family. We're thinking $5,000 from you would be appropriate. Not asking. Telling. Assuming. Family helps family. I stared at those words, thought about lying in a hospital bed, alone, while they celebrated my sister. Thought about every dollar I'd scraped together while they claimed poverty. Thought about 32 years of being invisible while being endlessly useful. Something in me shifted. Fundamental. Irrevocable. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even angry. I was done. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a response to her text. Something bigger. A comprehensive record of everything. Every financial transaction with dates and amounts. Every ignored emergency. Every missed milestone. Every instance of being treated as a resource instead of a daughter. My hands didn't shake. My vision was clear. The grief would come later, I was sure. The pain of losing a family I'd never really had. The mourning for the mother who'd chosen a party over my emergency surgery. The father who'd damaged my credit without a second thought. The sister who'd taken $50,000 of indirect subsidies while never once asking how I was doing. But right now, I was focused on one thing: truth. They were going to know exactly what they'd done, and exactly what they were losing. I was done being invisible. I was done being used. And I was going to make sure everyone understood what family helps family had actually meant for the past 32 years. I spent the next week building my case like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my career. Because in a way, I was. This was my life, my truth, and I needed it to be unassailable. I requested bank statements going back 6 years, downloaded every transfer, every check image, every payment confirmation. I created a master spreadsheet with columns for date, amount, stated purpose, actual purpose, where different, and notes. I went through my email searching for every conversation about money, exported them to a folder, organized chronologically. I did the same with text messages, screenshots of every request, every "we'll pay you back," every "just this once." Then I turned to social media. Rachel's Facebook was a timeline of expenses disguised as life updates. I screenshot everything with dates. Finally opening my boutique, dreams coming true. The same week I paid her $3,500 emergency rent debt. Celebrating my new job at the best steakhouse. So blessed. Tagged with Dad, neither of them acknowledging my promotion announcement in the family chat 3 days earlier. Weekend getaway with Mom, mother-daughter bonding. 1 month after I'd sent $2,400 for Mom's medical emergency. The pattern was damning when laid out chronologically. Every time they claimed financial hardship to me, there was evidence of discretionary spending, not necessities, luxuries, celebrations, experiences. I found the loan documents for Dad's car, pulled my credit report. There it was. 3 missed payments. My score had dropped from 780 to 738. For a financial consultant, that was more than a number. It was proof of betrayal. He'd risked my professional credibility and future borrowing power without even telling me there was a problem. I created 2 documents. The first was comprehensive. 15 pages. Every transaction with supporting evidence. Every missed event with context. A timeline that made the pattern impossible to deny. This one was for my family. So they couldn't claim ignorance. So they couldn't rewrite history. The second was brief. 3 paragraphs. Factual, unemotional, dignified. This one was for extended family and anyone else who'd hear some version of events. I wasn't going to defend myself against lies. I was going to preempt them with truth. But even as I compiled evidence, I knew I needed something else. Perspective. In support. Confirmation that I wasn't crazy for seeing this as a problem. I thought about Aunt Caroline, Dad's older sister, distant from the family for years. I'd always been told she was difficult, that she'd caused problems, that she'd turned her back on family over something vague and never quite explained. Now I wondered if her story was just another version of mine. I found her number in an old contact list, stared at it for 20 minutes before I gathered courage to dial. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Emma, is everything all right?" Her first assumption was crisis. I guess that's what our family had trained everyone to expect. "I'm okay," I said. Physically, anyway. I needed to talk to someone outside the situation, and I was hoping you might understand. "Tell me," she said simply. So I did. All of it. The hospital, and the $52,000, the years of being invisible. My voice shook sometimes, but I got through it. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Emma," she finally said, her voice thick. How old are you now? 32. I was 34 when I finally set boundaries with your father and his parents. Do you know why we don't talk anymore? I was always told you caused problems. She laughed, bitter and knowing. I'm sure that's the story. The truth? Your father and I had the same parents you and Rachel have, just in different roles. He was the golden child. I was the responsible one. Sound familiar? My breath caught. I put myself through college while they paid for his degree, she continued. I loaned them money for years while they funded his lifestyle. When I got engaged, or they asked me to postpone my wedding because he needed money for his contractor's license. When I said no, I became the selfish one, the difficult one. What happened? I whispered. I stopped participating, set boundaries. They told everyone I'd abandoned the family. And you know what I realized? People who genuinely love you don't require you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. The fact that they saw my boundaries as abandonment told me everything. We talked for 3 hours. Caroline asked me questions that reframed everything. What are you getting from this relationship? If these people weren't related to you, would you tolerate this treatment? Do you believe you deserve better? That last question broke something open in me. Did I deserve better? And I'd spent so long trying to earn basic recognition that I'd never stopped to ask if I deserved it simply by existing. Simply by being their daughter? Simply by being a person worthy of care. You don't need permission to put yourself first, Caroline said. But if you're waiting for it, I'm giving it to you. You deserve better, Emma. You've always deserved better. After we hung up, I sat with those words. Let them settle into places that had been empty for too long. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Emma, why haven't you responded about the wedding contribution? We need to finalize numbers. Family helps family. Family helps family. I read those words and felt nothing. No guilt, no obligation, not even anger, just clarity. I opened my comprehensive document and began drafting a letter. Not angry, not accusatory, just factual. I have provided $52,000 in financial support over 5 years. When I was hospitalized for emergency surgery, I was told not to interfere with Rachel's engagement party. I will no longer provide financial support or accept treatment as an obligation rather than a valued family member. I need distance to heal from years of feeling invisible in my own family. I wrote and rewrote, removed emotional language, added documentation, made it impossible to dismiss or mischaracterize. This wasn't about making them understand. They might never understand. This was about making the truth undeniable. Caroline called me back that evening. How are you doing? She asked. I'm writing the letter, setting boundaries, stepping back. Good. But Emma, prepare yourself. They won't respond the way you hope. They'll deny, minimize, blame you. You people don't become defensive unless some part of them knows you're right. But that doesn't mean they'll admit it. I know, I said. And I did. This wasn't about getting an apology or acknowledgement. This was about freeing myself. One more thing, Caroline said. After you send this, you're going to need support. Not from them. They won't provide it. But from people who actually see you. Do you have that? I thought about Marcus, about the therapist's wife he'd mentioned, about Caroline herself. I'm building it, I said. Good. Because you're going to need it. This is going to get hard before it gets easier. But on the other side, freedom. I promise. I scheduled the email to send on Tuesday morning. Timed when I'd be at work, surrounded by colleagues, with structure to hold me up when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I attached the financial documentation, the timeline, everything. Then I set my phone to Do Not Disturb. Caroline would be available to talk. Marcus had already offered to check on me. I wasn't alone. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And that terrified me almost as much as it freed me. I didn't send an immediate response to my mother's text about the wedding contribution. Instead, I did what I'd learned to do. I planned. Marcus found me in the break room Monday morning, staring at coffee I hadn't drunk. "You okay?" he asked, his voice casual but his eyes concerned. I looked at this man who'd driven me home from the hospital, who'd brought me soup, who'd shown me more kindness in one emergency than my family had in years. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Why did you help me? We barely know each other." He sat down across from me. "My wife's a family therapist. I've heard enough stories to recognize certain patterns, and—" He hesitated. "I've overheard some of your phone calls, the way you sound after them. Nobody should sound like that after talking to family." Something in my chest loosened. Someone had seen me, really seen me. "I'm thinking about cutting them off," I said quietly. "My family. And I don't know if I'm being dramatic or finally being rational." "Want to talk to Keisha? My wife? She's good at helping people figure that out." I met Dr. Keisha Williams 2 days later at a small coffee shop near her practice. She was warm but direct, the kind of person who didn't waste time on pleasantries when something important was happening. "Marcus told me a little," she said. "But I want to hear it from you. What's going on?" I gave her the condensed version. The money, the hospital, the pattern of being invisible. I kept apologizing for taking her time, for being dramatic, for probably overreacting. "Stop," she said gently after my third apology. "Stop minimizing. What you're describing has a name. Several names, actually: scapegoat golden child dynamic, parentification, financial exploitation, emotional neglect." Hearing clinical terms from my experience was validating and devastating simultaneously. "This is a recognized pattern in dysfunctional families," she continued. "The scapegoat, that's you, tends to be competent, independent, empathetic. You become the family's resource and emotional dumping ground. The golden child, your sister, is protected, coddled, enabled. She never has to face real consequences because there's always someone to bail her out." "But why?" I asked. "Why would parents do that?" "Because it serves them. Your stability subsidizes your sister's lifestyle and their ability to be good parents to her without financial strain. Your independence means they don't have to feel guilty about neglecting you. You're fine, right? You've got it together. Meanwhile, Rachel needs them, which makes them feel useful and important." She leaned forward. "Emma, here's what you need to understand. Confrontation won't change them. They're deeply invested in this dynamic. It works for them. But you can change your participation." "How?" "First, accept that you're not going to get what you want from them. No apology, no acknowledgement, no sudden realization. They'll deny, minimize, blame shift, play victim. You need to be prepared for that." We spent the next hour role-playing their likely responses. "Mom, we never asked you for money, you offered." Response: "The pattern of requests and expectations speaks for itself. I'm not debating history, I'm setting a boundary." Dad: "This is inappropriate and hurtful. We raised you better." Response: "I'm not discussing this further. My decision is final." Rachel: "You're ruining my wedding over jealousy." Response: "I wish you well, but I can't continue this relationship as it's been." Keisha helped me understand something crucial. I didn't need to convince them. I needed to inform them and hold my boundary. "The moment you start defending or explaining, you've entered negotiation," she said. "This isn't a negotiation, this is you stating reality." Over the next few days, I met with both Keisha and Caroline multiple times. We strategized like a legal team preparing for trial. Caroline helped with practical matters. You need two statements ready, she advised. One for your immediate family, detailed, documented, private. One for extended family, brief, dignified, factual. Together, we crafted both. The family letter was comprehensive but not cruel. It laid out the financial facts with supporting documentation. It listed the pattern of emotional dismissal with specific examples. It stated clearly, I will no longer provide financial support or accept treatment as an obligation rather than a valued family member. I need distance to heal. The public statement was 3 sentences. I've made a decision to create distance from my immediate family after years of being taken for granted financially and emotionally. I don't expect everyone to understand, but I'm at peace with my choice and ask for my privacy to be respected. Keisha coached me on what would happen after. They'll try to make you the villain, she warned. They'll tell everyone you've changed, you're being selfish, you're abandoning them. That's why documentation matters. Facts beat narratives. What if I feel guilty? I asked. You will. Guilt is how they've controlled you your whole life. Being easy, not causing problems, not being a burden. You were trained into that. Breaking training feels wrong even when it's right. The guilt will come. Let it come. Feel it. But don't let it change your decision. We made a plan. Send the letter Tuesday morning when I'm at work. Don't respond to initial reactions. Let them exhaust themselves first. Send one group response in the family chat, then silence. Prepare for extended family involvement. Have support on speed dial. Marcus offered to take me to lunch Tuesday to make sure I wasn't alone when the fallout started. Caroline would be available by phone all day. Keisha gave me her cell number for emergencies. You're not alone in this, Keisha reminded me. That's crucial. Your family made you feel isolated. We're showing you that you're not. Sunday night, I did a final read-through of the letter. It was factual, firm, and free of the anger I'd initially felt. This wasn't about hurting them. This was about freeing myself. I attached the financial spreadsheet, the timeline, the evidence. I scheduled it to send Tuesday at 9 a.m. Then I did something Caroline suggested. I wrote a letter to myself. Dear Emma, I wrote, when you doubt this decision, and you will, remember, you're not being mean. You're being honest. You're not abandoning them. You're saving yourself. You deserve to be more than useful. You deserve to be loved. I saved it in my phone. For when the guilt came. For when I wavered. Because I knew I would. But I also knew, for the first time in 32 years, I was strong enough to choose myself anyway. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., my email sent automatically. I was at my desk, Marcus in the office across the hall, when my phone started buzzing. I'd turned off notification sounds, but the screen kept lighting up. Mom calling, Mom calling, Mom calling. The text from Rachel. What the hell is this? Dad calling. I watched the notifications accumulate without touching them. 17 calls from my mother in the first hour. Texts from Rachel escalating from confusion to anger. What is this? You're making things up. This is insane. You're going to ruin my wedding over jealousy? My father sent one text, carefully worded. This is inappropriate and hurtful. We raised you better than this. Call me immediately. I gave them 3 hours to react. Let them exhaust their initial panic. Then, at noon, I sent one response to our family group chat. Everything in my letter is documented and true. I'm not discussing this further. I need space, and I will not be contributing to the wedding or attending. I wish you well, but I'm stepping back for my own well-being. Then I muted the conversation. Marcus took me to lunch as planned. We didn't talk about the letter. We talked about his kids, about a movie he'd seen, about anything normal. It helped. But when I got back to my desk, the fallout had spread. My phone showed missed calls from Aunt Linda, Uncle Tom, my cousin Jessica. The extended family had been mobilized. I listened to one voicemail from Aunt Linda. Emma, honey, your mother called me very upset. She says you sent some terrible letter demanding money back, that you're refusing to come to Rachel's wedding out of spite. What's going on? This doesn't sound like you. That's when I understood. They were controlling the narrative. I called Caroline. They're telling people I'm demanding repayment and sabotaging the wedding, I said, making me sound petty and vindictive. Of course they are. Are you surprised? No, but it still hurts. I know. Time to use your prepared statement. Send it to anyone who reaches out. Let the documentation speak for itself. I sent the brief statement to Aunt Linda, Uncle Tom, and Jessica. I've made a decision to create distance from my immediate family after years of being taken for granted financially and emotionally. I don't expect everyone to understand, but I'm at peace with my choice and ask for my privacy to be respected. To my surprise, Jessica called back immediately. Emma, can I ask you something directly? Of course. Is it true about the hospital? Your mom's version doesn't make sense. She says you had minor outpatient procedure and you're blowing it out of proportion. My stomach tightened. I had emergency surgery for a ruptured ovarian cyst with internal bleeding. I texted them from the ambulance, and they told me it could wait until after Rachel's engagement party. Silence. Then, Jesus, Emma. It's documented in the email I sent them. I can forward it to you if you want to see for yourself. Please. I forwarded the full letter with attachments to Jessica. Then, after hesitation, to Uncle Tom. Both had asked directly. Both deserved to see the truth. The responses came within hours. Uncle Tom called, his voice shaking. Emma, I had no idea. Your mother told us you were doing great, that you were happy to help out, that this was all mutual family support. We didn't know you were funding everything. They told you I was happy to help? She made it sound like you insisted. Like you were the successful one who wanted to give back. He paused. And the hospital thing. Emma, that's unconscionable. I'm so sorry. Jessica texted. I always felt something was off at family gatherings, the way they talked about you versus Rachel. I thought I was imagining it. The documentation makes it impossible to deny. I'm here if you need anything. Two family members who'd seen the evidence believed me. It shouldn't have mattered so much. I knew the truth. But it did. Validation after years of being gaslit was oxygen after suffocation. But my parents and Rachel weren't done. Wednesday evening, Rachel posted on social media. Vague enough to avoid direct accusation, specific enough that anyone who knew us would understand. It's so sad when toxic family members try to sabotage your happiness during what should be the best time of your life. Some people keep score instead of just loving family unconditionally. Praying for healing for those who choose bitterness over love. #family. First. #choosing peace. #wedding planning. The post got 43 likes, comments full of support from people who had no idea what they were supporting. Stay strong. Real family supports each other. Some people are just jealous. Your day will be perfect without negativity. Blood doesn't always mean family. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you. I stared at my screen, watching my sister weaponize the language of boundaries and self-care to paint me as the villain. Keisha had warned me this would happen. Caroline had prepared me. But seeing it still felt like a punch to the gut. Marcus found me in the parking lot after work, sitting in my car. You okay? She's making me the toxic one, and people are believing her. People who don't know the truth. Do you care what strangers think? I thought about it. I care that she gets to lie. So tell the truth. Calmly. Factually. Let people decide. I thought about it all night. Keisha had advised against social media engagement. Don't wrestle pigs. You both get dirty. But the pig likes it. But I also remembered something Caroline said. Silent acceptance of lies becomes complicity in them. Thursday morning, I crafted one final statement. Not on social media. I wouldn't give Rachel that platform. To extended family. The people who mattered. The ones who'd asked what was happening. I sent an email to the extended family list, BCC'd, so no one could see who else received it. I won't be responding to individual inquiries anymore, so I want to be clear once. I've provided my immediate family over $52,000 in financial support over 5 years, often while they claimed hardship but spent significantly on non-essentials. When I was hospitalized for emergency surgery, I was told not to interfere with Rachel's engagement party. I'm not angry. I'm done. I wish them well, but I won't continue being the invisible daughter and family ATM. This is my final statement on this matter. I attached the financial spreadsheet, the timeline, the receipts. Then I closed my laptop and waited. The silence that followed was deafening. No angry calls, no defensive texts. Just silence. Because facts are hard to argue with. Several relatives reached out privately over the next few days. Support, mostly. Shock at the documentation. Aunt Carol, who I barely knew, sent a long email about her own experience being the responsible one in her family. Uncle Tom mentioned, almost casually, that he was reconsidering some estate planning decisions after seeing how your parents handled things. My mother's sister, Aunt Diane, called. Emma, I don't know what to say. Your mother told us you were doing well, that you liked helping. We had no idea it was like this. I know, I said, because I did. My parents had been careful. They'd controlled the narrative for years, making me complicit by keeping me invisible. But now I was visible. And the truth was undeniable. My mother called once more, 2 days after my final statement. I answered, curious what she'd say now that the evidence was public. How could you do this to us? She asked, her voice tight. Airing family business. Making us look like monsters. Not, I'm sorry you felt invisible. Not, I didn't realize how much you gave. Just, how could you do this to us? I told the truth, I said calmly. If the truth makes you look bad, that's not my fault. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't turn on each other. You're right, I said. Family doesn't ignore their daughter's emergency surgery for a party. Family doesn't take $50,000 and call it mutual support. Family doesn't make one child invisible so another can shine. Silence. I need to go, I said. I wish you the best, Mom. I really do. But I'm done. I hung up before she could respond, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The power shift was complete. I wasn't trying to earn my place anymore. I wasn't explaining or defending or apologizing. I was simply walking away. With my dignity intact and the truth on my side. The aftermath unfolded over weeks like dominoes falling in slow motion. My father's car payments went into default 2 weeks after I cut contact. Collection agencies called my number since I'd co-signed. I contacted the lender, explained the situation, and worked out an agreement. I paid a fee to be removed from the loan. They refinanced it solely in his name, and his credit took the hit instead of mine. It cost me $800 to sever that tie. Worth every penny. I checked my credit report obsessively for a few weeks, making sure there were no other hidden financial connections I'd forgotten. There weren't. The damage to my score from his missed payments would recover over time. At least it wasn't getting worse. The wedding planning developments came through the grapevine. Jessica, who was still invited, kept me loosely informed. Not gossip, just facts. The budget had been based on my assumed $5,000 contribution. Without it, compromises were necessary. Smaller guest list, less expensive venue, no destination wedding. They'd moved it to a local hotel ballroom. Rachel's having a meltdown. Jessica reported during a call. She keeps saying you ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. I just stopped funding it. 2 weeks after my letter, Rachel called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Em? Her voice was sweet, conciliatory. I know things have been weird, but you're my sister. I can't get married without you there. Can we talk? The manipulation was so transparent, I almost laughed. Rachel, I meant what I said. I love you. But I can't keep participating in a dynamic where I'm valued only for what I provide. I hope you have a beautiful wedding. But Emma, I hung up, gently, but firmly. She didn't call back. 3 weeks after my letter, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw her through the door camera, standing in the hallway, tissues in hand, looking fragile and sad. I didn't open the door. I used the intercom. Mom, I asked for space. What are you doing here? Her voice came through tinny and emotional. We need to talk about this, Emma, face to face. You can't just cut us off over email. I can, actually, and I did. Please, just let me in. Let me explain. Explain through the intercom. She looked up at the camera, tears streaming. For a moment, I almost wavered. Then she started talking, and the moment passed. We never asked you for money. You offered. You make it sound like we're using you. But you're our daughter. Helping family is what you do. She paused, gathering herself. Rachel needs more support because she's not as strong as you. She struggles more. You've always been so independent, so capable. We didn't think you needed us the same way. There it was. The core of everything. Punishment for being low maintenance, penalized for competence. I pressed the button. Mom, I needed you when I was in the hospital and you chose a party. I needed you every time I achieved something and you barely noticed. I needed you to see me as more than a checkbook. You're right that I offered help. But I should have been more than just useful. I was your daughter too. Was? Her voice broke. You're still our daughter. Then you should have treated me like one. Emma, please. I'm done with this conversation. I need you to leave. If you don't, I'll call building security. She stood there for another minute, crying, before finally walking away. I watched her go on the camera and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, just tired resolution. She didn't come back. The power shift was subtle but profound throughout the extended family. Uncle Tom started inviting me to family gatherings that my parents weren't hosting. His daughter's graduation party. Thanksgiving at his house. He made it clear I was welcome independent of my parents. Jessica and I started meeting for coffee every few weeks. Building a real relationship, not just family obligation. Cousin Mark, who I barely knew, he reached out to say his own parents had pulled similar financial manipulation on him years ago. We compared notes, shared strategies, built an unexpected friendship. Caroline and I video chatted weekly. She'd become more than support. She'd become genuine family. The kind based on mutual respect and affection, not blood obligation. And my parents? They told anyone who'd listen that I'd changed, that I'd turned my back on family, that I was going through something. But the people who mattered had seen the documentation. They knew the truth. The ones who didn't know the truth weren't people I needed in my life anyway. My work life improved dramatically. Without the constant financial drain and emotional burden, I had resources to invest in myself. I was calmer in meetings, more focused, less distracted by family crisis management. My boss noticed. 6 weeks after I cut contact, she called me into her office. Emma, your work has always been solid, but lately you've been exceptional. I'd like to talk about a promotion. Senior financial consultant, 20% raise, better clients, more autonomy. I accepted, and I didn't tell my family. That information was for people who cared about my achievements, not people who'd proven they didn't. I started therapy with a different counselor, one who specialized in family trauma. The sessions were hard, confronting the depth of the neglect I'd experienced, understanding how it had shaped my relationships, my self-worth, my entire adult life. But it was also healing, putting language to experiences I'd normalized, learning that wanting to be loved wasn't weakness, expecting to earn that love was the problem. I booked a vacation, 2 weeks in Colorado, something I'd been putting off for years because the money always went to family emergencies. I hiked. I read books. I sat in mountain silence and let myself feel everything I'd been suppressing. The grief came there. Real, deep mourning for the family I'd wanted and never had. For the parents who could have loved me better but chose not to. For the sister who took everything and gave nothing. For the childhood I'd spent trying to be invisible enough to be safe and visible enough to matter. I cried on a mountain trail, alone, and it was cleansing in a way nothing else had been. 3 months after the letter, Rachel's wedding happened. I saw the photos on social media. Smaller than she'd planned. Simpler. But she looked happy. My parents looked proud. The world kept turning without me in it. Hyun and I felt nothing but distant well-wishes. No anger. No jealousy. Not even sadness. Just indifference, which was its own form of freedom. My phone stayed quiet. No calls from my parents. No texts from Rachel. The silence that had once terrified me. If I don't give, they'll forget I exist. Turned out to be peaceful. They'd forgotten I existed anyway, even when I gave everything. At least now I existed for myself. I took the money I wasn't sending to them and put it toward a down payment on a condo. Small, but mine. Purchased with money I'd earned and kept. No subsidies, no guilt. Just my own achievement. I stood in the empty living room the day I got the keys, and I smiled. This was what freedom looked like. Not perfect, not painless, but real. And finally mine. 1 year after I sent that letter, I turned 33 in my own condo, surrounded by people who chose me. Not because I was useful, not because I was easy, just because they liked who I was. The journey to get here wasn't linear. There were days I second-guessed everything. Days the guilt was overwhelming. Days I almost called my mother just to fill the silence. But I didn't, because I'd learned something crucial. Silence is better than toxicity dressed up as love. I'd joined a therapy group for adults recovering from family scapegoating. 8 people, all with eerily similar stories. Different details, same patterns. Parents who picked favorites. Siblings who took without reciprocating. Financial exploitation disguised as family duty. Hearing their experiences helped me understand I wasn't uniquely damaged or uniquely at fault. These dynamics are common, painful, and crucially, not my responsibility to fix. I learned vocabulary that reframed everything: emotional neglect, conditional love, financial exploitation, triangulation, parentification. Naming the patterns helped me stop internalizing blame. In individual therapy, I worked through harder questions. Why did I accept that treatment for so long? Because I was trained from childhood to believe love was earned through being easy. The less I needed, the more valuable I was. Except that's a paradox. The less I needed, the less they noticed me at all. How do I build healthy relationships when my template for love was so broken? Slowly, with people who show up without needing me to be in crisis first, with people who celebrate my successes instead of minimizing them, with people who see me, not what I can do for them. What do I actually want from life when I'm not trying to earn worthiness? That one's still evolving. But I'm learning. Slowly. My relationship with my immediate family settled into permanent distance. No contact in 10 months, no calls, No texts, nothing for holidays or birthdays. At first, the silence hurt. I grieved the family I'd wanted. The mother who should have chosen my emergency over a party. The father who should have protected my credit instead of damaging it. The sister who should have noticed I existed beyond being a resource. But gradually, the silence became peaceful. I stopped waiting for them to change. Stopped hoping they'd wake up one day and realize what they'd lost. Stopped checking my phone expecting apologies that would never come. They might never understand, and I'm okay with that. Extended family evolved into chosen family. Caroline and I video chat every week. I visited her for a week last summer. We hiked, cooked together, talked about everything and nothing. She's become the family member I needed, someone who sees my worth without requiring proof. Uncle Tom includes me in family gatherings, his house for Thanksgiving, summer barbecues. I'm not the family ATM there. I'm just Emma. Jessica became a real friend. We meet for coffee, go to movies, text random things throughout the week. She told me recently, "I always felt like something was off in how your parents treated you. I'm glad you finally saw it too." Professionally, I've thrived. The promotion came with opportunities I'd have missed if I'd still been managing family financial crises. I led a major project, got recognized at company meetings. I built professional relationships without the constant distraction of whose emergency I needed to fund next. I maxed out my 401k contributions, started a diversified investment portfolio, saved aggressively for the future I'd been delaying. The condo I bought is modest but perfect. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, natural light. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, no one's opinion mattering but mine. Sometimes I walk through it and just appreciate the quiet. No one calling with emergencies. No one guilting me about money. Just peace. I started dating, which terrified me initially. Therapy helped me recognize red flags I'd been blind to before. Partners who took more than they gave, who praised my independence while exploiting it, who expected me to be low maintenance while they required constant accommodation. And I learned to advocate for my needs early, to walk away when someone showed they couldn't meet me halfway, to understand that healthy relationships are reciprocal, not me giving endlessly while someone else takes. Michael appeared 6 months ago. We met at a hiking group I'd joined. He's kind, stable, genuinely interested in my life. He asks about my day and actually listens to the answer. He celebrates my achievements without diminishing them. He shows up consistently without requiring crisis to motivate him. It's early, but it's healthy. A completely new pattern. I've built friendships with intention too. Marcus and Keisha became close friends. I'm part of their family dinners now. Game nights. Their kids call me Aunt Emma, and it feels more real than any blood connection I had. I joined a book club, a hiking group, found community in shared interests rather than obligatory ties. These relationships are lighter, easier, because they're based on mutual enjoyment instead of duty and disappointment. The question of forgiveness came up in therapy recently. "Do you forgive your family?" my therapist asked. I struggled with that. I'm not angry anymore, but I don't know if I forgive them, and I feel guilty about that. She leaned forward. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. You can acknowledge that your parents did the best they could with their limitations, that Rachel was shaped by the same dysfunctional system, and still choose not to have them in your life. You can wish them well from a distance. That's not holding a grudge. That's protecting your peace. Permission to move forward without forced forgiveness was pivotal. And I wrote an unsent letter, therapeutic exercise, to my family. I acknowledged good memories alongside the pain, Christmas mornings when I was small, family vacations before Rachel was born, moments when I felt seen, even if they were rare. But I also wrote the truth, that good moments don't erase patterns of harm. That occasional visibility doesn't compensate for years of neglect. That love, real love, shouldn't require earning. I released my hope that they'd change, accepted that they probably never would, and stated clearly, I'm choosing myself. Caroline came over for the letter burning ceremony. We built a small fire in my fireplace, and I fed the pages to the flames. How do you feel? She asked as we watched the paper curl and blacken. Free, I said, and meant it. Last week, a friend from the book club, Sarah, is struggling with similar family dynamics, asked me for advice. We met for coffee, and I found myself sharing what I'd learned. I spent years trying to prove I was worth loving by being endlessly useful, I told her. I thought if I gave enough, achieved enough, asked for little enough, they'd finally see my value. But I was trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. How did you stop? I accepted that their inability to see me wasn't about my worth. It was about their limitations. I couldn't fix it by being better. I could only free myself by walking away. But everyone says family is everything, that you should forgive anything, that blood is thicker than water. I smiled. Yitvash, the full quote is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds you choose are stronger than the ones you're born into. I leaned forward. I'm not saying everyone should cut off their family, but if your family makes you feel invisible, used, or less than, you're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to build a new family from people who actually see you. She left with my number saved in her phone and Caroline's therapist recommendation, another person beginning the journey I'd walked, and I realized, maybe that's part of healing, using your pain to help someone else find their way out. Last night, I hosted a dinner party. Nothing elaborate. Just 8 people around my table. Caroline visiting from out of town, Uncle Tom and his wife, Marcus and Keisha, Jessica, Michael, Sarah from book club. And the conversation flowed easily, laughter without performance, food shared without obligation, stories told without competition. I looked around that table and felt something I couldn't have articulated a year ago, belonging. Not because I'd earned it through sacrifice or usefulness, but because I was surrounded by people who valued me for who I was. The little girl sitting at the top of the stairs, wondering what was wrong with her, would be amazed to see this. A woman who finally understood nothing was ever wrong with her. She just needed to find people who could see what was right. After everyone left, I cleaned up in comfortable silence, tired but content. I caught my reflection in the window. Just me, no performance, no armor, and I smiled. Not because everything was perfect. My family was still estranged. Some relatives still thought I was wrong. Holidays would always carry complicated feelings. But for the first time in my life, I was enough exactly as I was. And I finally believed it. Have you ever had to choose between family and yourself? The comments are a safe space. I'd love to hear your story. Because here's what I've learned. We're not alone in this. Thousands of us are walking this path. Learning that love shouldn't hurt. That family can be chosen. That protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to earn what should have been yours all along. You are worthy of love that doesn't require proof. You are allowed to walk away from people who make you feel small. You are permitted to choose yourself, even when everyone else chose someone else. It took me 32 years to learn that, but I'm 33 now, and I'm finally free.